The smoke curled up into the night sky like dark serpents, twisting and hissing against the backdrop of flashing red and blue lights. Flames devoured the grand mansion at the edge of town, their orange tongues licking the sky with fury. And through the chaos, past the shouting firefighters and the choking smell of burning wood, stood Ethan Cole, a single father with soot already smudged on his face, his heart hammering as he stared at the inferno. Somewhere inside that mansion was a man whose voice still echoed painfully in his mind. The man who'd once looked at him across a polished mahogany desk and said with a sneer, "You're not what we're looking for, Mr. Cole. Maybe try something simpler." Little did that man know, the one Ethan was about to risk his life to save, that fate had a strange way of testing the human heart. Before we dive into this powerful story of redemption and courage, make sure to hit like, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe to Kindness Universe for more true and emotional stories that restore faith in humanity. Ethan Cole wasn't always the man standing at the gates of a burning mansion. Once, not too long ago, he'd been a proud construction supervisor, skilled, respected, and trusted. But life had a cruel sense of timing. 2 years ago, when his wife Emma was diagnosed with cancer, he quit his job to care for her. They fought hard together, until the end. Her death left a hollow ache in him that no medicine could heal. From that day forward, Ethan lived only for his daughter, Lily, 7 years old, with her mother's gentle eyes and her father's quiet strength. He took small jobs, repairs, painting, carpentry, whatever could help pay for Lily's school fees and their modest rent. Every dollar mattered. Every meal counted. But despite the struggles, he never let Lily see his despair. Every morning he'd braid her hair, pack her lunch, and tell her, "We're doing great, baby. Just you wait. Daddy's gonna make it big again someday." One chilly afternoon, Ethan sat in his car outside the towering glass headquarters of Langford Industries. His palms were damp as he adjusted the only tie he owned, its fabric frayed at the edges. The interview today was for a maintenance supervisor position, steady pay, benefits, health insurance. It was exactly what he needed. He walked into the office with cautious hope, his resume trembling slightly in his hands. But the moment he stepped into the interview room, his hope began to shrink. Behind a vast desk sat Charles Langford, the CEO. Early 40s, sleek suit, hair slicked back, a face that looked like it had never known struggle. Charles didn't stand to greet him. Instead, he leaned back, eyes narrowing at Ethan's worn shoes and cheap suit. "So, Mr. Cole," Charles began, his tone sharp, "you were once a supervisor at Mason Construction. Why'd you leave?" Ethan hesitated, then answered truthfully, "My wife got sick. I had to." Charles raised a hand, cutting him off. "I see. Family reasons." He scribbled something on the paper in front of him. "And since then, odd jobs. Painting houses, handyman work, delivery driving. Not exactly upward trajectory, is it?" The words stung, but Ethan stayed calm. "I did what I had to for my daughter." Charles smirked. "Of course. But this position requires commitment and reliability. We can't afford someone who might fall apart under pressure again." Ethan clenched his jaw. "I don't fall apart. I fight through." But it didn't matter. Charles had already dismissed him in his mind. "We'll be in touch," he said curtly. And just like that, Ethan walked out, humiliation burning in his chest like acid. He knew they'd never call. That night, as he tucked Lily into bed, he smiled through his exhaustion. "It's okay, sweetheart. Maybe next time." She hugged him tight. "You always tell me never to give up, Daddy, so you won't either, right?" Her words kept him going. Even when his pride was crushed, even when the world seemed deaf to his effort, he pushed forward. Because giving up wasn't an option. Not when a little girl looked at him like he was her hero. 2 months later, fate came roaring back, literally. Ethan had just finished fixing a broken fence for an elderly neighbor when he saw the smoke rising over the hill. It wasn't the lazy kind from a chimney. It was thick, black, terrifying. He dropped his toolbox and ran toward it. When he reached the edge of the estate, his heart stopped. The Langford mansion, the same place whose owner had belittled him, was engulfed in flames. Fire trucks screamed into the driveway, firefighters yelling orders as they unrolled hoses. A woman, pale and frantic, was shouting from the crowd, "Mr. Langford's still inside!" He went back in to find his son. Ethan froze. He remembered that name, that voice, Charles Langford, the man who'd humiliated him. But before he could even process the thought, another scream pierced the air. A boy's voice from the upper window, coughing, crying out for help. The firefighters were trying, but the flames were too high. The roof was threatening to collapse. One of them shouted, "We can't reach him yet! The floor's too unstable." And that's when Ethan moved. Without hesitation, without a second thought, he grabbed a discarded fireproof blanket and ran. Someone tried to stop him, yelling, "Sir, it's not safe!" But Ethan's legs were already carrying him forward, heart pounding, eyes fixed on that burning house. He crashed through the front door, the heat slamming into him like a wall. Smoke clawed at his lungs, searing his throat. He could barely see, just flickers of fire crawling up the staircase. "Hello," he shouted hoarsely. "Ian here?" A faint cry answered from upstairs. "Help! Dade!" "How?" Ethan charged toward the sound, using his jacket to cover his face. The wooden steps groaned beneath his boots, splintering from the fire's rage. At the top of the stairs, he found the boy, a trembling child, maybe 10, with soot covering his face. "It's okay, I got you," Ethan said, his voice calm despite the chaos. He lifted the boy into his arms and turned back toward the stairs, just as part of the ceiling collapsed, blocking the way. For a split second, fear gripped him. But then he saw a figure across the hallway, a man coughing violently, crawling toward the same child. Charles Langford. His expensive shirt was torn, his face streaked with ash, but his eyes, those cold, judgmental eyes, were now wide with helpless terror. "Why?" Charles gasped. Please help him." Ethan didn't hesitate. He pulled the boy closer, then reached out to help Charles stand. "We're getting out. Now?" They staggered through the burning hall, ducking under beams and debris. Every breath felt like swallowing fire. Ethan spotted a shattered window at the end of the corridor. "There!" he shouted. "Go!" He pushed Charles forward, helping him through first. Then, clutching the boy tight, he leaped through the window, landing hard on the grass below as embers rained around them. The firefighters rushed in, grabbing the boy and Charles. Ethan collapsed, coughing, gasping for air. The sound of sirens faded into a blur as he lay there, the world spinning, but he was alive. They were all alive. Hours later, at the hospital, Ethan sat on a bed with an oxygen mask, his arms wrapped in bandages. He didn't expect thanks. Honestly, he didn't even think about it. All he wanted was to get back to Lily. But then the door opened, and Charles Langford stepped in, no longer the powerful CEO with perfect confidence. He looked fragile now, his voice trembling. "Mr. Cole," he began softly. I don't even know what to say. You saved my son. You saved me." Ethan just shook his head. Anyone would have done the same. Charles swallowed hard. "No, they wouldn't have. Especially not after how I treated you." His voice cracked. "I was arrogant, blind. I saw your struggle as weakness. But today, I saw what real strength looks like." Ethan said nothing. There was nothing to say. Sometimes silence spoke louder than any speech. A week later, a letter arrived at Ethan's small apartment. It was on Langford Industries stationery. Inside was a job offer, head of maintenance and site safety, full salary, benefits, insurance, and a note handwritten by Charles. "Heroes don't wear suits. They walk through fire for others. Thank you for teaching me that." When Ethan showed Lily the letter, her eyes sparkled. "See, Daddy, you didn't give up. You're my hero." He smiled, tears welling up. "No, baby. You're the reason I never gave up." If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Kindness Universe, where real stories remind us that kindness, courage, and compassion can change everything. A few months later, Ethan stood outside the same glass building that had once made him feel small. Only this time, his name was on the employee badge, and when he walked into Charles's office, the CEO stood and shook his hand like an equal. Outside, the city skyline glowed with morning light. A new day, a new chance. Ethan thought of the flames, of the fear, of the choice he'd made that night. Sometimes life tests you in the cruelest ways, not to break you, but to reveal the fire within you. The kind that doesn't destroy, but forges who you are meant to become. And that's the kind of fire Ethan Cole carried in his heart forever.